Let's go live and say hi to Jeffrey. Man, what a weird week. I stopped paying attention to the news on like Wednesday. It was just I don't know, it was too much. So, how was your
Yeah.
week?
Oh, it was busy here too. I mean, like news-wise, it's all over the place,
Mm,
and well, I mean, it's one of those things where I don't know.
yeah.
Some of it I can't help but think that uh, you know, news cycles got used to the fact that they had something to constantly go on.
Right.
And so now, we've got a lot of, I wouldn't call it manufactured chaos, but overhyped to say the least.
Yeah, they're looking for the controversy in a normal story, you know what I mean? That's what's
Hmm.
bugging me. It can't be a wildfire without blaming somebody for the causes and effects of it, you know? It's
Hmm.
it can't be whatever the topic of the day. Like I think we talked early in the week about Joe Biden saying long hauler syndrome should be covered by the ADA, and I just wanted to say to Joe, that's so funny because the ADA doesn't even really cover disabled people anymore. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um
So I
it
mean,
was it was
I'm,
gutted early on in 2016 by the Senate for Donald Trump. You know what I mean? He was
mhm.
the building he builds buildings and he didn't want those restrictions in his elevators and steps and stuff. So yeah, we need to restore that and get back to it. But it became a story about long hauler syndrome. And then what I tried to do, I was going to go and make a list of all the things that you could go on disability for if you had long hauler syndrome. And then I just went into a rant on my note about how we got here and never actually got to the long hauler part of it.
Well, I mean, I mean, I can see it from your perspective. It's bullshit. You've got you've got this weird mix of people who had people who got COVID and got it bad through no fault of their own, and then you got people who
Sure.
got COVID because they thought it was a hoax, or
Hmm.
whatever crazy shit that they happen to think of. And now you've got all of these stories coming out of people who are wishing they would have gotten the vaccine, and this, that, and the other. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell people at this point. It's like, look, sure, you can take your chances with COVID and hope that you don't end up getting deep throated by a doctor, or
Right.
you can take the vaccine and know that there's a significantly smaller chance that that's bound to happen.
Sure.
No vaccine is perfect, and
Mm-mm.
people are, and that's what people are griping about right now. That haven't been vaccinated. It's like, oh, all these breakthrough cases. It's like, well, I mean, because we still kind of are in the middle of a pandemic, and because
Right.
we don't have a whole lot of vaccination. Number one, here in the United States, and number two, around the world. I mean, you're going to get variants, and Delta variant is a significant change from
Yeah.
what the vaccines were originally created to take on.
It went from a sneeze to a garden hose. If somebody's infected and you're around them, it's like getting hit in the face with the garden hose of COVID, you know?
Hmm. and
That's
and
the
I mean,
difference.
and realistically too, like now it's transmissibility is on par with chicken pox, seasonal flu,
Mhm.
and any number of diseases.
Right.
And so, like, that number, that because it's got an R naught of 6 to 8, that means that the average person is going to be spreading it to 6 to 8 people, which is
Mhm.
very common, like flu wise. uh does that, what does that mean? Well, it means that if you're vaccinated, you're gonna get it. Like, it just happens.
Yep.
But the reality is that you have a very, very, very small chance of ending up in the hospital or dead.
Right.
And I mean, the other reality is that if you do get it, your symptoms, statistically are going to be far more mild compared to
Yes.
other people. So, you have to think about it in that, if you're vaccinated and you get a moderate version of COVID, you can thank and you're vaccinated, you can thank the vaccine for
Mhm.
helping give you some of that protection that is going to keep you from being hospitalized or dead.
Right.
Whereas if you also get just a mild version of the Delta variant, you can thank you can thank the vaccine for giving you the ability to, not have something more worse,
Mhm.
a bit worse and more annoying.
But aren't we right back to where we were? It like the vaccine protects me, but it doesn't protect you. Like if I have the Delta variant, you're going to get it, right? Because I can still spread it. I just can't die from it if I'm vaccinated. And I
It's
think
just,
that's the real issue. We can
yeah.
all get COVID and we can all give COVID, but some of us won't die from it and others will.
Mhm. Well, and I mean, statistically, to say it mathematically correctly, statistically speaking, far less of us that have been vaccinated are going to die from it than people who have not been vaccinated, and that's just the
Yeah,
reality. Yeah,
right.
it's not the magic bullet, and we're all gonna walk around bulletproof. Fact of the matter is that even when you wear a bulletproof vest and you get shot, it still fucking hurts.
Yes, that's a great analogy. You won't die from the bullet, but man, that's going to hurt for a little while.
Yeah, and the other thing too is much like a bulletproof vest, because being a gun person, you know those vests are only so good,
Yeah.
and depending on the bullet that gets used, you know yeah, 9 millimeter gonna suck, 45 gonna suck, 22 gonna suck. Something that's armor piercing,
Hmm.
and that's what Delta is it's a mild armor piercer of a disease.
Right.
Yeah, for the most part, you probably are all right, but it's a chance you don't necessarily want to take. Now, I'm not saying that we need to go back into lockdowns or anything like that, or I think that, people are going to have to make the wisest choice for them at this point. What the
Hmm.
right so-called claim that they wanted all along. It's just that I think that they were fucking stupid the way that they were going about it. It's like
Yeah.
at this point, if you're worried, get the vaccine. So that
Hmm.
way, number one, you can protect your own health.
Right.
And then number two, use your decision metrics to decide what it is that you're comfortable with. Like,
Right.
for example, I know somebody who, wanted to go do uh, an outing with a bunch of friends this weekend, and turns out one of the people in the group was unvaccinated and ended up with COVID. And, they're vaccinated, and they were just like, I don't know what choice I want, what the choice is. Like, I don't feel comfortable. It's like, well, in terms of what's going to happen to you, I
Hmm.
mean, statistically speaking, very little you have to worry about.
Right.
Whether or not you can spread it to somebody else, I mean, one of the things we have to keep in mind is that when we talk about the unvaccinated, overwhelmingly we kind of give shit to the people who choose not to be vaccinated. But there's
Hmm.
still people who, number one, have disabilities that are preventing them from being able to get to a vaccine.
Right.
And number two, people who are 12 and under who have not had a vaccine approved for them yet.
Right. It's
And so,
honestly it's the people that have put the research in and then decided not to get it. I kind of respect them. I don't know what you're researching, but if you've gone to opposing opinions and your doctors and everybody has come to the conclusion that it's best for you to not get the vaccine, I can't challenge that. What I have an issue with is those people that on its face say I'm not going to research it because I know it's bad because the Democrats are trying to push it or whatever it is, the Republicans told me not to, and they didn't do the research. That's the
I just
people I
keep
have a problem.
countering. I just keep countering people with it's Trump's vaccine.
That's my point is like we didn't even make the Biden vaccine yet that has the Bill Gates chip in it. Right now we're using the what is it? Koch brothers chip from
Hmm.
the Trump vaccine and I don't understand why they wouldn't want that.
Hmm.
Oh, I know why. Because it automatically deducts from your account every month and it goes into the Trump campaign. That's what the chip does. The Koch brothers chip does.
Right there, you go. No, for fuck's sake.
So,
That's just it. Is like the people, some of the people that have been the most vocal about getting it, and I sit down and say, this was created under Trump, right?
yeah.
And then they just kind of sit there, and then you can watch like as the cognitive dissonance wheels start to grind. It's
Hmm.
like it's like Biden is literally pushing the vaccine that Trump pushed to have created. Period. End of story.
Right.
So when you sit down and you hear things that like the CPAC cheered over the fact that Biden missed the 70% mark. It's like this is literally your own party cheering on the fact that number one, they didn't get Trump's vaccine, and number two, they literally are cheering for your death
Well,
or your hospital bills.
yeah, they're cheering for Biden to fail, but it's it's their voters that are dying to
Right.
prove that point. And that, I don't know why they haven't realized that, Republican supporters, that
Oh,
yeah, you're a tool right now for the Republican Party's agenda, and I don't know if they have an agenda, you know.
well, right now their agenda has just been to let their constituents die and press falsehoods.
Well,
And
that
that's the
was,
and that's
yeah,
the wild thing about this is that, look, like, uh, the biggest one that I have to give credit to the Republicans on is, the lack of vaccine mandates, because the vaccines aren't FDA approved. Like, I have to give it to them on that one, just because, like,
yeah,
there's no precedent in saying you have to take a vaccine that doesn't have full FDA approval.
and the military's waiting for full approval too, so
Yeah, and I've got quite a few military buddies, and that's what they've said is, like, we can't
mm,
make anybody take the vaccine at this point. That said, the moment that it gets full FDA approval, it's either get the jab or get out.
right. Yep.
And that's just it, and a lot of people try to do the whole, like, well, my rights. It's like, vaccine status is not a protected class, whether or not you want it to be.
No. Public safety trumps individual rights, 1902, the case. I don't know the case name, but it was argued in the Supreme Court that yes, you have to get vaccinated if you pose a risk to the population, you know?
And so, and that's just it. We have this time and again throughout many other cases. I mean,
Hmm.
there are vaccines that you have to take, that your kids have to take in order to go to public school. And if you
Right.
don't want to do that, then homeschooling, or if find some private school that allows you to go non-vaccinated. And well, I can tell you how that looks, because in Washington in 2018 we had an epic measles outbreak.
Yes, you really did. I remember talking to Dan about that all the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, by all means, if you don't want to get vaccinated, don't get vaccinated. But then, as I have said time and again, you know, you complain about socialism. Well, my money that I pay into insurance or through taxes should not be
Hmm.
covering your decision to be a public health risk. Period. End of story. And
Agreed.
those hospital bills are fucking atrocious.
Right.
And the only time that some people seem to get it is when they realize that they're going to be on the hook for anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million worth of hospital bills. And then suddenly they're crying for some socialism. And I'm like,
Yeah.
look, you had your chance. The shot was your chance.
Hmm.
So, like, literally spend $25 to get a slew of shots that is going to keep you from spending $250,000. And that's really what it is. Like, right now, it's like, tax wise, like, the COVID shots are about $25, and legitimately could actually be produced for less, by the time that they get all of their factory space tooled up.
Sure. Sure.
And so literally you could be, the cost could be $10 to prevent you from having a 250,000 to a $1 million hospital bill.
Right. But
Because
yet still, why is the COVID shot free and insulin $900? Anyway,
oh
keep
yeah,
going.
that's a huge problem. Like,
Yeah. But
and
I'm
and
sorry,
that's
I didn't want to segue because I really like the topic we're on.
well, I mean, and that's, to me, that's any number of certain, medications that keep
Hmm.
going up year after year, and it doesn't make any sense, because
Right.
I mean, in terms of medical theory, these things should be easier to produce, because you should have had time to tool up factory space. So the reality in this whole situation is that, in those cases, that's just market gouging. That's not anything to
Mhm.
do with supply and demand. But back to
Right.
where we were.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I want to say we discussed this, that a lot of conservatives, Trump supporters, Republicans were going to wind up on disability because of COVID. I remember you brought that up like back in like February or March. And I was like, yeah. And I've been watching. And now here we are. And a whole bunch of conservatives that claimed that we're just freeloaders on the system are going to become dependent on the system that they created. And this to me is a bit of irony. And I know it sucks and I hate that. I hate talking about people getting sick and suffering, but I also want to say that yeah, karma exists if you can stick around long enough to see it. You
If you
know?
can, yeah, if you survive to see it, karma
Right,
exists. and
right.
and and this was a prediction that I, like, once again, like, I want to be proven wrong. I really do, because I
Yeah.
don't. There's certain cases I don't want to be right. I really don't. And I saw, we saw this coming. Like, people with long haulers, like the number of people who are going to wind up on Social Security and disability because
Yeah.
they legitimately aren't able to function because of long COVID. Like, we knew that this was possible.
Right.
When we found out that long COVID was a thing and that people were still struggling to, live in just a regular life
Right.
without working, we knew that this was going to be possible. I mean, it really doesn't take a scientist to figure that out.
The probable, not just possible, probable,
Well, and this is where we are, is that,
Yeah.
you know, it's unfortunate because the people who made choices that they were trying to avoid this from happening,
Right.
I feel bad for them because now they're stuck in the system and they were trying to do everything right.
Exactly. And you can't separate the two. Nobody's going to say, "Well, I didn't want it
Legally,
to,"
you can't.
you
Legally,
know.
you can't,
But
unfortunately.
well, you might be able to say at a certain point, like at the end of this year, we're not accepting new COVID because you should have been vaccinated, but there's still breakthrough. You can't do that. We're
Right.
Americans.
You still
We
got
deal
breakthrough
with it.
cases and all of that.
Individuals, we've paid into it. We deserve to get it out. It's just it's going to boil down to a UBI, isn't it? Because the Democrats are just pouring money into people's My friend Sherry said, "Hey, can you tell me why I have 3,000 extra dollars in my account this month?" And I said, "Sure, you got the child tax credit, $750. You finally got your stimulus of $1,400. You got about $3,000." And she said, "What do I do with it?" I said, "Save 200 in a savings account because you're going to get screwed at the end of the year because you're going to be taxed on the income you got. It's a tax credit. So save $200 of that every month and then take the rest. Take the rest and be appreciative that the Democrats gave you something, you know?
Yeah. If you have any debts, pay,
Yeah.
if you have any debts that have interest, pay those off.
Right. I
And
like
if you don't,
that.
I mean, because that's been one of the things that I've been doing over the course of the pandemic
Right.
is I've had some of my student loans paused, and so I've been taking that money for the most part. Like, initially I was using it to invest in my local economy, like trying to
Right.
keep some of my small businesses that I go to alive.
Right.
But then I also started putting money down on the debts that I have that have interest that are currently working, because now is as good a time as any to try and get those debts paid down.
That's right. That's right.
The fewer debts that I have in that realm, the easier it's going to be.
Hmm. I take it back to this thing I heard. Rich people they're poor because their money is working for them. They put it into things that makes their money work for them. While poor people, they get money and they buy things they think rich people would have.
Right.
So yeah, paying down your debt, investing. I found that I like Robinhood, the Robinhood app, which just went public. I didn't buy any stock in it though. And Traeger, by the way, Adam. Hey, Adam and Sean, Traeger, the smoker maker, just went public on the stock exchange, which is exciting. It's $22 and it hasn't moved yet.
Hey, a lot of people bought those grills, and
Yeah,
everything that I've heard about them is they're fantastic.
they
I mean, I
are.
don't have the money for a Traeger right now, but
Mm-mm.
I've heard nothing but good things, and I am absolutely somebody who appreciates a good smoked meat. So,
I would love a smoker, and yeah. So if you can't afford a Traeger, maybe buy some Traeger stock and then wait for it to grow, and then cash it in and buy yourself a Traeger. You know what I mean? I just think that stuff is cool.
oh, I think it's useful things like that. Like,
Yeah.
I generally have a problem with publicly traded companies because they're now you have this external pressure in order to perform, and that external
Mm-hmm.
pressure
Right.
oftentimes leads to a couple of things: reduced service, customer service, or reduced quality, because you've got to save money somewhere in order to meet what investors expect
And get your bonus at the end of every year.
and get your bonus at the end of every year. Like,
That's why insulin's $900.
mhm. And realistically, like, to me, like, I love the idea when an entity is literally they just got to be concerned about their employee welfare and
Yeah.
their customer product, you know because working in an industry like that, it's like it's nice to know that the pressures that I have to deal with are only making sure that the product that people are relying on works the way that it's supposed to, not because we need to make money, but because we all need to make money, but we don't have to make money in excess of what somebody else expects us to do.
I
So
agree. It's the loaf of bread. You knew how to make bread since the beginning of time. Why has the price like quadrupled in my lifetime? It's the same white bread, but now it costs 2.99 instead of 99 cents, and I just won't buy it. I just won't. I'll buy the more expensive like whole grain breads because I
uh,
can justify that. But I'm not
you
going to
know,
spend $4 on white bread, you
and
know.
then and enough people have become Betty Crocker over the course of the pandemic that they can make their own bread.
Oh yeah, I just bought a new big thing of yeast. I'm going to make a whole bunch of bread. I
I
love
I know a
baking
few
bread.
people. I know a few people who got like just dedicated bread makers, and they said,
Mm-mm.
"Yeah, no, it's changed the sandwich game for me. Like getting a fresh slice of bread every morning to have
Yeah.
toast or to. It's like, is it as convenient as just picking up a loaf from the grocery store? No. Does it taste better? Yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
like I used to use a bread machine, but it made really dense bread, and now I've been working on getting fluffier bread, So I have a mixer, but I
mhm.
mix it very lightly. Once it starts forming, I pull it out and I mix it by hand, and I'm going to let it rise for as long as possible. I really want to be like a bread expert.
Oh yeah, no, bread is. Oh man, good
Mm.
bread. Mm.
Yeah. And
There's
if you want a hint, add some coconut flour into your bread because it adds a moisture and it's gluten free.
mm, I love gluten bread, straight up. There was this back home in Montana. There's a bakery called Wheat Montana,
Hmm.
and they do all their own. They raise all these different grains and do any number of different breads. They make this spelt bread that is absolutely delicious. I
Mm.
loved that stuff. Oh man, like that is, I think, one of the biggest things I miss about where I lived in Montana was Wheat Montana and being able to pick up a loaf of Wheat Montana spelt bread from the
What's
grocery store.
what's it like? What does it taste like?
It's
What's
a
it?
so it's a dense bread
Hmm.
that is kind it's a little bit sweeter,
Okay.
and I mean it just is like in terms of like a toast, it's like, oh, I don't even know how to describe how dense this bread is. It's
Uh,
fantastic. But like
okay.
I mean, and spelt is actually like really nutrient packed. So
Mm.
like it's good stuff.
I like that. I love like pumpernickel bread,
Mm,
and that's like a dense bread to me. But when you toast it, it totally changes. And when I was a kid, I come from like a Jewish background, and they would play poker all night, and then go
hmm.
to the store to get bagels and
Oh
lox
yeah.
bagels, and I would always see the pumpernickel and be like, "Ooh, I want the chocolate one," and they'd be like, "Ha ha ha," and I'd bite into it and be like, "It's not chocolate,"
Right.
but I
Pumpernickel
always
as a kid
wanted
is
it.
that one where you're like, oh, this sounds awesome. You bite into it, you're like, ah.
Yeah, I just got like a flaxseed or whatever that is.
Right. No,
Mm.
so when I was in college, I had so we had a new class that some of us got to try out, just to kind of get some reviews from a senior perspective of whether or not this would be useful. And it was like a kind of like a world history and languages class, kind of like an introduction to the idea of studying languages.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
it was fantastic, and the class I actually loved. So the French teacher that we had, uh, she was not very technologically savvy.
Mhm.
So I'm supposed to be a student in the class, and I was also the language department assistant. And so she asked me if I would run tech for her so that way she could teach the class. And of course, I'm like, yeah, sure, that's no problem for me.
Nice.
And so didn't think anything of it. It was great. Well, after that weekend, she shows up at the office and she says, "Hey, I wanted to say thanks for you know, uh, running tech for me." I was like, "Oh, no worries. I mean, it's fine. I don't mind." And she's like, "Well, here, I made a loaf of French seed bread for you."
Mm.
Oh my God. Like she gave me two different loaves of bread, and they were, oh man, I don't even know how to describe the two different loaves of bread other than they were just absolutely phenomenal.
I love that. A seed bread? How nutrient would that be? How much roughage
Oh,
is in that, you know?
a lot.
Yeah.
But that was the thing though, is that like it, lots of nutrients, lots of roughage. It was like all around just
Yeah.
a great bread. So
Yes.
being able to have something like that, it was just absolutely phenomenal. I just loved every second of that.
Mm. I mean, I don't eat salads like 3 times a week because I love the taste of salad, you know what I mean? I eat it because it's like a scrub brush going through my body, and I like that, you know what I mean? So,
Well, definitely as we get older, the old salad scrub brush for the pooper is a great
mm.
decision.
Well, I think most of the food we have is like our digestive system is made to pull the nutrients out of the body, right? But I
Hmm.
think what we're doing is we're doing the job of the stomach by pre-processing the food, and our body's just like, we don't have to do much with this, and it just kind of sits there on the sides, and slowly the nutrients get sucked out. But so I like the roughage to like clean that stuff out and be like, all right, now I can get the nutrients I want into me, you know?
Or just get an order of Taco Bell and it will do the same, but with
Kind
fire coming
of.
out of your asshole.
Kind of. It'll shoot everything out, but, like, it's like grease in a to me, it's like grease in a pipe. All
Oh yeah.
the gluten and carb stuff just kinda sits in there and slowly closes it, and then Taco Bell just shoots through that like water, but, like, you put a scrub brush like seed bread in there, and suddenly it's like, "Alright,
Hmm.
we can go back to eating steak again," you know?
Yeah, no, and that's just it. Is like as we've talked about it probably 1,000 times. Eat what's right for your body, and
Mhm.
figure out what you need when you need it. Like if your body craves a salad, have a salad. If your body needs meat, eat some meat.
Heck yeah, that's what I say. Enjoy life, right?
Yeah, remember, eat healthy, stay fit, die anyways.
I love that. So there is no segue from
Speaking of
that.
dying anyways.
Speaking of
Speaking
dying anyways, if somebody hadn't controlled her mental health in the time of the Olympics, she might have died during, I don't know a segue, but I wanted to
Well,
talk about.
there's a really famous Soviet gymnast that this happened to, and I don't know if you saw that story come up, and I
Mm-mm,
forget what
no.
her name was, but in the 1980s, she was a 14-year-old Soviet gymnast. She was one of the top of the world, but she had a leg injury that hadn't quite healed, and so this is very much at the height of the Soviets need to beat the Americans need to
Right.
beat the Soviets, and we're just going full bore regardless. Well, because this 14-year-old girl's leg hadn't healed, and her coaches pushed her into competing, she ended up she just didn't have the power in her leg because it was still broken,
Right.
and she didn't get the twist that she needed to, and she landed on her jaw and snapped her neck, and it made her a quadriplegic.
Mm,
Who is it? Elena Makina.
wow.
Yeah, and so she died in 2006 at the age of 46. Um,
And Devi is welcome to join us on the mental health issue. I am perfectly okay with that anytime, just to let her know.
oh, absolutely. I think they're just enjoying some coffee to get
Sounds good.
themselves up and moving.
Sounds good.
And so like mental health, like having played sports, like
Hmm.
this there's very much a toxic, you got to do it for me, you got to do it for the team, you got to do it for your school, you got to do it for your college, you got to do it for your country, and it's like,
Right.
you know that kind of stuff has to stop, because your body has limits for a reason, and
Hmm.
and you have to know what those limits are. Yeah,
Yeah.
you goof up an ankle a little bit and you can walk through it and you can still compete. I've done that plenty of times.
Yeah.
But when you have something medically wrong, and if you don't trust your own judge, like I don't know that people realize, and I'm definitely not the best person to talk on this, but like those aerials that those gymnasts do, like I mean, from a physics perspective, if you don't get that twist right, you're ending up on your head and compressing your spine, and if
Yeah.
you'll never walk again.
That could happen with a backflip. That I was a gymnast and that used to freak me out. The fact that I didn't know if I did a backflip if I would just break my neck, you know?
Hmm.
And that's why I dropped out, because I couldn't get past that thought of breaking my neck with every move that I did on any piece of equipment.
And I mean, even playing the sports that I did, football and basketball,
Hmm.
you put your head in the wrong spot, you end up with a concussion or broken vertebra, and
Right.
it's bad news. And this, like, I don't know what fucking white moron sitting at home beating their meat and saying she needed to do it for the team
Mm-mm.
understands that, like, those tricks are dangerous under
Sure.
normal conditions, under conditions where you're fully in it, you're mentally there, you are in key with whatever it is that you're going to attempt.
Right.
And when you don't trust your own judgment in that point, like, that's the exact moment that you need to be like, nope, I'm stepping back, because I'm not going to get hurt for anybody else's sake.
Right. You don't push through it in a major competition when you're not ready, you know? It's
Right.
one thing if you're in practice doubting yourself and you can have the support there around you to work through it, but she knew that she had a qualified backup. There was somebody else that was willing to step in that was qualified to do it, and she wasn't at the time. So her mental health made her lower on the ability spectrum at that moment than the other people on the team, and that is awesome that she could have the that she could
That's,
say that she could say, I don't feel like I'm at the best, you know? And the
you know, and
coach say that, the coach to be like, you're right, you're not the best. She's now better than you. I'm going to use her. You go take care of yourself. I love
right.
that.
And like, seriously, like, even as somebody who just played, high school sports, even I had those nights where it was like, I am not the best person to be, trying to
Right.
do the things that I'm trying to do. You're the one that's on fire tonight. You're going to be our lead.
Right.
And recognizing that, like, not even, not just even taking the mental health aspect out of it, and recognizing when you've got somebody who's on fire and being like, you know what, you're going to lead tonight because you're unstoppable at this point. Let's go with you.
Hmm.
You've got this. And factor in the mental health. And I think that Simone Biles showed that you can make a decision for your mental health and know that there are going to be people that will back you up
Yeah.
and say, you know what, you're right. It's like, you take what time you need
Yeah.
to get yourself to help yourself out, and we will take care of this. Don't worry about us, worry about you.
Right. It's the sliding opinion scale. I don't know her, so I should have no opinion about it. I should just support her.
Exactly.
Maybe people closer know more, but I do not, so it's not my place. And I want it just I put on um I put on Instagram how to explain to people that even though you want to do something, it's not something you're capable of right now. Like, and that's the truth with her. She had 100% want to do it, but what her ability was zero. And that's the problem. She wanted to do it, but wasn't able to do it. And it's the same
Right.
thing as a quadriplegic trying to do gymnastics. It's impossible. They want to do it. That girl wants to, but she can't. And Simone Biles had a different kind of injury. And
Hmm.
I really love the fact that everybody treated her like a person and not like a sponsored product, you know?
And I would, even the big company, a lot of big companies out there even said, you know what, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and really, like, I need to drive this home. Like, the people out there who are saying that she should have just did it for the team and did it for the country, she doesn't owe fucking anybody anything.
That's right.
Does not. And people need to stop thinking that gymnastics is just this simple little cartwheel sport, because it's not.
Right. Well,
That shit's actually dangerous.
these are the same people that cheer when a guy lays on the field half dead with a broken neck in a football game. They
Yeah,
think
that's
that
true.
football is simple. They see hockey and they see these guys getting hit into the boards and laying there and they're like, "Yes, they're cheering it."
Yeah, no.
They would have been just as happy to see her fail, to get up there and break her neck. And they would have been like, "Wow, I witnessed that.
Yep.
Wow." And they could talk about it. They nobody wants to they people love to see others succeed and fail. But
Hmm.
doing the right thing and living their life, people get bored with that and they think they have
Yep.
an opinion on it.
And that's the thing is that, you know it, the reality is that when somebody says, "Hey, I can't do it," it should be, "Okay, cool."
Yeah.
And then, we just keep pushing forward, one way or
Hmm.
another. Like, it's like, all right, let's revisit this and let's find out what we can do. Or,
Right.
all right, cool, we're gonna bring in another team member and we're gonna get this, because we need to accomplish something.
Hmm.
Like, it should be a very, well, neutral experience for the person who's like, I
Right.
can't do this. Like, it
But
shouldn't, you know, they should feel supported in their decision, yes, but they also shouldn't feel like, they're going to face the wrath of a community that's going to be screaming that
right.
they were a letdown. That's not it at
Right.
all.
On a more personal level, my friend's daughter bought a house and invited me to the house party. And she said, "Are you going to be coming to the house party?" And I told her, I was like, because of my site, um, groups, gatherings, they give me anxiety. I said, but I would much rather go and be like uncomfortable than make you guys upset. And she said, well, maybe we can do something smaller, or next week instead. And I was like, that's great. Thank you. And
Absolutely.
that's how it should work on every level. She didn't need to judge me or question it. She knew
Hmm.
I wanted to do it, but I didn't know if it was something I could do. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because
Right.
there's a point where I spill. You give me a cup without a lid, you give me a white couch, you give me barbecue. You know what I mean? It's gonna
Yeah.
happen. And it
Yeah.
gives me anxiety that people are watching me the whole time, and that it's in my head. I don't think people are actually doing it, but that's how I feel, and it gives me anxiety. And I love her for giving me the other option and not judging me for it. You know what I mean? We
Right.
should do that with everybody, including Simone Biles, who I
Hmm.
think is she's just awesome to begin with. And I love that she's being a leader that way. And do you think this is a trend that we can see going forward?
My hope is that yes, with the eventuality that this isn't such a big deal. When someone says, "Hey, I can't step up to meet the demand,"
Mhm.
and they go, "Cool, all right," and they bring in somebody else, or we should see this. We should see this in places like the NFL, for example, when a quarterback's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm not in it tonight. Like, I'm not here." A running back, a wide receiver, and they go, "Okay, cool," and so they throw in the next person who gets in there. Like, that's the whole point of a team sport, is that not
Yeah.
everybody's on 100% of the time, and the expectation that any of these people are on 100% of the time is just pure folly.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have quarterbacks that have nights where they couldn't hit a train if it hit them first. You're going to
Mm.
have receivers who, you know for whatever reason, like, every single ball slips through their fingers. Like,
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's it's a reality, but it shouldn't be damning that those nights happen.
Right. Yeah. I love it. I think we're treating people more like individuals people instead of typecasting. Like, I think we're going to start seeing Simone Biles as a wonderful person and not just a robotic gymnast. And Megan Rapinoe from the women's soccer team, I think we're starting to see that they're people, they're not robots. And I think
Hmm.
we've seen that male female, in sports, that they should be the robot and they should just do it. You know what I mean? And be the
Hmm.
best they can every time. And I think we're getting away from that. I don't know what made us do it though. I don't know what catalyst changed it. And now we're suddenly seeing athletes as just people and not robots.
Well, honestly, I think we have the female athletes to thank for a lot of that. And I think we have trans athletes to thank for a lot of that. That people are people, and people can compete, and people can compete at the highest level, and people can also decide when not to compete
Hmm.
because they can't compete at the highest level. That
Yeah.
was always, like, especially in practice, one of the things that I was always told, like, go 100% because otherwise you're going to get hurt.
Right.
you know and if you can't go 100%, people need to be able to recognize that if you can't just do it and you're having to force yourself, you're not at 100%, period, end of story. You got to
Right.
recognize, and I think that, those athletes have pushed back in such a way that it's starting to make everybody else think about it.
Right.
And I think it's fantastic.
Wow,
that
it's like
they've pushed back on that, because now you're going to have these competing narratives of, you know, oh well, you just have to push through it, to no, you fucking don't.
right,
Like, what's the point of having a team if you don't have somebody to back you up?
right. Wow, I'm trying to figure out the word to use, but now maybe athletes are a certain class of citizen. You know what I mean? Like an oppressed class of citizen that we need to recognize the rights of. That's interesting. That's an interesting perspective on it.
Well, I mean, if you look at the NCAA rulings that got handed down last month, that's
Yeah.
already starting to be the case.
Tell me more about that. I'll be right back.
So, um, this happened a little bit ago, but the NCAA basically has had a monopoly on college sports. Essentially, every single thing that is done, the NCAA profits off of, and they use their collegiate athletes basically for slave labor. The only way that they don't do it is that they have quote unquote scholarships, and they have educational credits and things like that. So basically, what they've tried to do is say, yeah, no, you're getting paid. It's your education, and it's whatever other scholarships. But there's been a few cases that have come up where collegiate athletes who are supposedly, having their needs met, aren't getting their needs met. They're not getting, like, for example, the housing or the food expenses that they need to be able to be competitors. Um, they're they've had to make choices about where they live in order to save money to afford the things that they need to compete. And well, these post collegiate athletes filed suit against the NCAA for antitrust, because
Hmm.
they didn't have the ability to make money off of their person. Like, literally, the NCAA profited off of, the individual through
Right.
any number of deals and sponsorships, but these athletes had no say in it whatsoever, whether they got to, use their image to what they wanted to do.
Hmm.
And so the Supreme Court, rightfully so and unanimously,
Yeah.
struck it down hard and said, that it was antitrust. And now the NCAA is on their heels trying to figure out what they're going to do next, because that's billions upon billions of dollars that the NCAA is not going to get, because now these collegiate athletes are going to be able to license themselves. They're going to be able
Hmm.
to represent themselves for the products that they want. They're going to be able to represent themselves for any number of sponsorships.
Yep.
And, you know, to me, good. The fact that, you had all of these individuals that were quite literally just at the NCAA's beck and call. Like,
Yep.
that's just fucked.
Yeah. And then now all these athletes have a chance to make money before they go pro, which means they don't necessarily have to go pro. And I think that's a big concern, you know what I mean? I remember when Ben Affleck was negotiating to do Daredevil, and he was like, "No, I want a percentage of the profits." You know, you can give me less money to do this stupid movie, but I want a percentage of the profits. And everybody in the world was like, "You can do that?" And I think that changed the way people saw how they could negotiate for themselves instead of using their representation to negotiate for them. I think that was a big moment. And then now athletes becoming their own endorsement, you know, like
Hmm.
their own sponsor. That is pretty cool. And you see that a lot more, like with Kobe Bryant, you know, he
Hmm.
was, or Michael Jordan even, he was his own shit. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's the thing is that you know college athletes being able to decide, being able to, number one, make money off of all of these things that the NCAA has literally,
Mm,
just
stolen.
shopped them out for,
Yeah.
without, anything other than the fact that saying it's like, look, you be grateful you're getting a college education.
Right.
Like, that's
It sounds like
fucked.
slavery with extra steps.
And that's pretty much how they painted it in the actual filing,
Yeah.
was that it was next to, it was next to slavery. That's literally how this black football player had painted it. It's like I controlled nothing about me and I got scraps.
Right. I mean, he got an education.
And he used that education to totally take on the NCAA, and he did it. And I'm fucking excited for that.
Yeah, me too. But so the average every athlete is trying to get to the magic number of $10 million, because if you take $10 million and invest it, you can live the rest of your life on the interest.
Hmm.
I saw that on the show Ballers. It was actually pretty informative, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And it dawned on me that yeah, and I watched guys do that in their fourth year. They were like, I got my $10 million, bye, and they lived up to their contract, and that was it. And I think
Hmm.
now, if college athletes can hit that mark before they go pro, they don't even have to go pro, and that just saves their bodies, and they can do other things. I think
Right.
that's pretty interesting, and I wonder what the ramifications will be for the sport, like the pro sport, the side of it. Where are we going to start getting our athletes from? Like high school now? You know,
To me, here, I mean, to me, what I think about that is it's
it's
like
pretty cool.
it's really awesome. My hope is that a bunch of these guys that a bunch of these athletes that go in, get their collegiate sponsorships done, whatever they decide to do, and they really invest in their education as well. And
Hmm.
they go out and they do things. They go out and they work in their communities to help
Yes,
make their communities better places. That's my hope, and
me too.
I think we're going to enter a new realm of what that looks like, and I think it's hard to put any predictions in place.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I love the pouring money into the community as opposed to sending it to the government.
I
Because
think.
I had this weird thought, Jeffrey. I don't,
Hmm.
and here's the thought. Trillions of dollars are being spent, right? But
Hmm.
I have not heard Joe Biden say, you know what? We're going to take $52 billion and we're going to eliminate homelessness altogether. Like
Hmm.
people without housing, we're going to make you a house. $52 billion. There's 550,000 of you. Done. Done.
Hmm.
Go get your house. He didn't say that. You know what I mean? And it makes me
Hmm.
wonder what the money is actually going to be spent on. And it made me think of the infrastructure to manage homelessness going
Hmm.
away, and how many other people would be negatively affected that actually make their money off of the despair. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I don't
Hmm.
know. It made me reconsider charitable organizations, in a
Hmm.
certain way, because they would be gone. Would they be happy if would Saint what is that? The Salvation Army? Would the Salvation Army be happy if they were put out of business because we no longer had homeless people?
Well, I mean, the Salvation Army. I mean, the number one, I'm not a fan of the organization, but charitable organizations like that. The answer to me is no. That they would not be gone because a lot of those organizations also do charitable work overseas.
Okay.
So they very much would still be there. The question, and I think the other thing that you have to take into account is just because somebody has a roof over the head, that doesn't mean that they have their needs met.
Oh, of course not.
And
No,
so,
of
like a
course
lot
not.
of what those charitable organizations supply are, the other needs that you might have: clothing and food and any number of things. Like
Right.
getting rid of one of the great question marks, which is a roof over your head, would be fantastic. And
Hmm.
I think we've seen that it's very clear that um, the feds aren't going to do anything about that.
But the
And
money,
so,
if we gave them a home, the money we then spent on them next would actually be beneficial and going towards something. It would be going to the loan, not the interest. You know what I mean? That's the way
well,
I look at it.
I mean,
If we're just maintaining somebody that lives outside and we're not giving them anything, then we're constantly helping them health wise and all that other, everything. But if we get them in a house, then that solves a major issue and we can start gaining ground on their happiness, you know?
absolutely. And I think that's one of those things that we definitely have to look at is that I mean, it's a multi-pronged approach. You've got several different factors and facets that have to be addressed at the same time.
Yeah.
That one definitely uh, solves quite a few issues. Like you said, health is a huge one. Public health is a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then also too, like, but it also too, like, it makes some of the other laws that that homeless people have been busted for, like sleeping on sidewalks
Yeah.
and their the encampments that they've created their living space in. It,
Mm-hmm.
it 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 does away with that and does away with those court
Those,
cases of them
yeah.
paying for prosecutors and judges' times and court clerks and filing fees and blah 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 blah.
Mm.
I mean, it does, and hopefully then you would start to see returns towards like, how do you help these individuals make it to the
Yeah.
next level?
Group counseling sessions, training, home ec, more
Hmm.
education, more school, simplified consumer math type things. I think that would be cool. Yeah. So
Oh,
you're saying
absolutely.
organizations would mutate and evolve into something, they wouldn't just disappear. I
No,
like that.
absolutely not. They would change, I would say that they would change their focus, because their focus might be housing for right now,
Hmm.
but once people are housed,
They're gonna
the
have a new
next it
focus.
is you're on to the next thing.
Right.
Is it food insecurity? Is it behavioral health?
Hmm.
Um is it uh occupational work? Is it
Yeah, exactly.
education? Is it any number of things? Like,
Yeah.
this
Homelessness
is
is like incarceration in the way that it stunts your growth and education. Like suddenly you're just stuck at where you started. And that's the problem. Like I'm thinking to myself, so a homeless person walks into his house and he has dirty clothes. Well, he doesn't know how to wash his clothes. He has no laundry detergent to wash his clothes, so he's still a dirty homeless person until he gets that what you were saying occupational therapy and education to learn these simple things. Like I don't know how to
I
use a
wouldn't even say that it's about
toilet.
learning simple things. It's about access. And
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
when you don't have access, it doesn't matter what you do or don't know. You
Well,
can know everything in the world, and if you don't have access to do anything about it,
but
doesn't matter.
if you don't know like laundry detergent or the simple little things that can destroy the stuff you have just on as a learning curve. You know what I mean?
Oh, like, I would say that if that's absolutely an issue, then yes, that's something that can easily be taught
Yeah,
or
not with
anything. But
I'm not talking absolutes. I'm just talking
right, right,
in
right. I
scenarios.
think, I think, I think, I think a better example is food math is one of my favorites to go to.
Yeah.
Do you have to buy the brand name thing, or does the store brand work for what you need it? Because a lot of the times you're saving significant costs. That
Hmm.
stretches your dollar a lot further than going out and buying the brand name of everything.
That's agreed. That's a big 10-4, big guy.
So, things like that,
Hmm.
very simple things on how do you take your value and stretch it. But
Yep.
once again, like, if you have a roof over somebody's head, but they don't have the ability to, if you don't give them some sort of pathway to be able to
Yeah. Shop,
buy
work,
food,
find healthcare. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, also too, like, some of the things that we've grown to require,
Hmm.
like, for example, why I think we talked about this last week. Why does a 4-year degree why is a 4-year degree required to answer telephones?
Right.
That's not a thing that should ever be. um
Yeah,
why.
we treat them on an individual basis is more of the thing, and I like the way we're not lumping people in groups anymore. Every homeless
Mhm,
person might be different. Every person without a home may be different, and
mhm,
they have different goals and different needs. But like I'm really proud of the fact that I learned that lettuce does what it does, and that I could eat that, and then have how to stretch. Like I made chili yesterday, and it's gonna last me 5 days, and I'm gonna have chili dogs and chili mac and chili, and so. And that
mhm,
cost me what it cost $7. And so yeah, I'm proud that I learned how to do that. I just think that I know
mhm.
people with roofs over their head that don't know this stuff. So
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know.
And that's, I mean, those are things that, even we came up against. How do you
Hmm.
how do you make how do you make something that's going to stretch for a while?
Right.
And you find ways to do it, and it's fantastic, and you find new ways to do it, and it's
Right.
exciting, and you end up making some really awesome stuff, and turns out that it doesn't cost you a whole lot to do it.
Yeah. I mean, the yeast cost $4 for the giant thing. I mean, the
Hmm.
flour cost $4. So for $8, I'm going to be able to make thousands of loaves or literally thousands of rolls or, hundreds of loaves of bread. So, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
difference. For $8, you can have all that bread, or you can go to the store and buy two loaves. And that's what
Hmm.
bugs me about it.
Oh, absolutely. But one of the things that you still have to have is you still have to have access to the time even to
Mm,
bake those loaves of bread, and
yeah.
you know
Yeah.
that's another one. you know so it's one of those things where we definitely, like, there are a lot of things that we can do to make this better.
Of
And
course. But some people aren't even looking at it. You know what I mean?
imagine if, for example, this is a fun one. Imagine if you had access to, like, a community sort of cookbook. Really, I mean, we
Yeah.
always grew up with a hard copy. Like, you had, like,
Hmm.
the PTA cookbook, or the Lutheran Church cookbook.
Yeah.
But, like, what if you had a local site, local cookbook,
On
that
the
you could
next
get,
door app or something.
something like that, where it's like, hey, I get this from this grocery store, or I get this from this grocery store. You can make this,
Ooh.
and it makes X number of servings. Something that is widely available to the community, and that way it's like, hey, look, it's like, I've got $20 to last a week. What can I make that's gonna
Yes.
what can I make that's gonna help me get to the next payday?
Hmm. But
you
learning
know
how to do that before you're down to $20 is a lot easier. You know what I mean? When you have $100 and you can afford to learn how to do that, it's easier than when trying to learn when you're poor.
it's true, but also too, I think that a lot of the times that's when necessity finally kicks in for us, is that it's like, uh-oh, what am I
Yeah.
going to do?
Right.
And the reality is like, you know we actually, this was a thread that came up on Reddit, and legitimately somebody was like, I've got $20 to make it to Friday. It's Monday. I'm hungry.
Hmm.
And you had a bunch of people who are like, hey, do you have Venmo, Cash App, any number of things? Like, I'll send you $5, I'll send you $10. And then you had a bunch of us who are like, hey, got some great recipes for you, things that you can make that are going to be nutrient packed and get you some really good high quality food that you'll
Right.
have for days.
Yeah.
you
Split
know
pea, split pea soup is one of those things for me. It's like $4 to make, and
hmm
it lasts forever. You know what I mean? I mean, it could be $6 if you put ham in it, and then it lasts for me. Like, I make a giant pot of it and I freeze it. Same
hmm
thing with the chili. I just make a giant pot and freeze it, and then when I'm depressed and don't feel like cooking, I just throw it in the microwave, and then I smell it and I'm like, all right, all right, I'm hungry now.
yeah, chili.
So,
Yeah.
and I love doing that. And yeah, I watch, like, people spend. I was married for 12 years, and this I had knew nothing about food, and this girl was. We went to Taco Bell on a date, and we spent $18. And then the next day, she said, "Give me $20 and let's go to the store." And I did, and she bought a pot roast and potatoes, and she made an entire meal, and then dessert, and all of that lasted 3 days. And she was like, "See, that's how you do it." And I was like,
hmm
interesting. And then when we got divorced, I lived on Papa John's, buy one, get one free, and Subway. I'd go up and get two sandwiches and then come back and live on that for 4 days.
hmm
And so I've also been food ignorant, and that's why I know that it's important to know your foods.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When your body crashes because you're eating McDonald's every day. Ooh, I got to. Oh, thank you for listening to Public Access America. We'll be right back Thursday for another episode. So, my friend told me that McDonald's has a secret menu, and you can get something called a McGangbang, which is a chicken sandwich shoved in a McDouble. And now I really, really, really want to try that.
Or you could just like order like 4 patties of four quarter pound. Get
Yeah.
instead of a double quarter pounder, get a double quarter pounder and call it a McPound my Angus.
Big pound my Angus. I love it. My dream was always to take the quarter pounder patties and put them on a Big Mac.
Hmm.
I always wanted the Big Mac with more meat. Because you notice every time it goes on sale, that patty gets a little smaller.
Hmm. Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So I saw
No,
something. I saw something. Oh, wait. Did you want to talk about
oh
food?
no, 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 no.
I'm hungry and on to food, but I noticed something this week that happening, and I wanted to know if you think it's just. I want to know what your perspective is on it because you're a little more cynical than me, and I'm a little more
Mm.
futures. Maybe I have an optimism. I have rose-colored glasses, and I'm
I,
seeing the Republicans in the Senate start to work with Democrats, and
hmm
and everybody's saying Mitch is setting us up. And I'm saying I think Mitch finally saw his off ramp. I think he saw that people didn't like the obstructionist Mitch, and he decided to give up on the Trump thing and just do his job because it'll make him look better. He's
hmm
been in the Senate all of his life. And, I make fun of him and call him an idiot and stuff. He's not an idiot. He
hmm
just, he just chose to be obstructionist, and I don't know why. But I think somebody got to his head, and I don't know who it was that convinced him. But now there's more Republicans that are acting mature, and they're just saying we're going to go back to classic Republican, which, by the way, I think sucks that we're going back to the system we had and not the one we need. But Republicans are coming out of the Trump fog, I think. Do you see it that way at all?
Um, yes and no. I
Yeah.
think the ones who literally don't give a shit anymore, or like are close to their, like you said, their off ramp, close to the end of their political career, where they're just like, yeah, this actually makes sense, and I'm
Okay.
not worried about winning the next election.
Right, right. Okay.
So that's my thought on it. I don't think it's like any of them deciding, hey, today I'm going to be a good person and say that we need infrastructure,
Okay.
because let's be realistic. Like, they had every chance to do infrastructure in the first 2 years
Yeah.
of Trump's presidency. They
Yeah, it
had
was
the
a big
House, they
joke,
had
right?
the Senate, they had the executive. Quite literally, all they would have had to do is been like, all right, we're going to do some infrastructure. All in favor? Yep. Okay, Democrats, go fuck yourselves. And we're doing this. And they didn't do that.
Right. Well, they gave all the money to corporations and hoped that they would do it, you know? And then
Hmm.
I saw something that said trickle down doesn't work. They'll just use the money to go to space. And I was like, that's spot on. You
Yep. And
know?
then that's how we got to watch Jeff Bezos ride a giant dildo into space.
Right. It wasn't one giant step for man. It was a joyride. And
Yeah, it was a ride
that's
on a
what they're
joystick.
doing. That's what they're doing because they charge you $99 a month to have Amazon Prime. You know what I mean?
Something like that. And
Something like that.
and that's just.
I think Mitch McConnell, I think he's a future seer too. And he can see the direction that he's going. And there was no out the way he was. And that was just as recently as Tuesday when the Capitol Police testified and he said, "No, I didn't see it. I was working. I'm in the Senate." And I think he realized that was a real shitty moment for him. You know what I mean? I don't know
Mm,
because now he's different.
mm.
He's monotone, he's happy. He said, "I am happy to be a part of this," which was strange to hear. And I think he sees this as a working relationship. And other
Well, I think.
Republicans might start coming back. I mean, I'm seeing them like Ivy, screaming, get your shot." But then you have the DeSantises that are still like the crazy fucks. I think
Hmm.
I think they're splitting into the
Hmm.
sedition party and the conservative, classic conservative.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because they've been doing it for like a year now.
Right. Well, I mean, realistically, like, if you like with the split that exists right now,
Hmm.
the Republicans who actually are using whatever brain cells that they have are looking at it and saying, look, we have the chance to control a bit more what the spending looks like
Yes.
if we play the game.
Right.
And this is what it used to look like.
Right.
this is what it used to look like, and this weird like enemy mentality of, any Republican working with this is what we did for decades before Trump.
That's why you get a salary and free insurance, you know what I mean? So that you can go and negotiate this stuff, not to sit in an office and twiddle your thumbs and go obstruct. That's
Right.
not what you get
Like,
paid for.
so you have this active negotiation of what does a what does an infrastructure bill look like,
Mm-hmm.
hard infrastructure bill, and actually have the chance to say, look, I mean, objectively speaking, our roads and our bridges suck ass,
Our
and that's got to get
airports, yeah.
fixed. And they they're doing their best to try to exclude what is going to be a necessary upgrade for our electrical infrastructure as we get more electrical vehicles online. They don't see that as part of an infrastructure bill. I think they're short-sighted because
I think they're
their their
short-sighted.
their donors and constituents are the ones making the electric vehicles.
Yeah. And the infrastructure for it, like you said, Shell is going to solar technology. Exxon is
Hmm.
looking into renewable energies. They're all doing it. Yes,
Hmm.
I think the Republicans are short-sighted that way too.
I think that they would have benefited by adding that, but at the same time too, I can see where what they're doing is essentially setting it up so that way, instead of the feds doing it, these private entities do it. They get to own it, they get to operate it, they get to charge whatever they want for it, and then
Mhm.
and I can see that point, is that side of it. But I think that in the long run, like especially like if uh I think for their own sake, like, because I guarantee you that the feds are going to end up with a fleet of electric vehicles, and
Oh
they're going
yeah.
to want to have their own infrastructure in place to be able to use those vehicles.
Mhm.
So, I think it's short-sighted on their part, but at the same time too, I can see why they're doing what they're doing.
Well, that's who they are. But at least
Hmm.
if you let the Democrats do it, then they're on the hook for doing it. But when you get back in power, you don't have to do it because it's already done. So I don't see a reason in it's a win-win for them to work with them and
They'll.
say, "Well, I tried to get rid of it, but golly, they just had to
I
have
can
it in
see.
there, you know?"
Well, what I can see happening is that if the Republicans ever take power again, what they'll end up doing is they'll end up um, they'll end up using that as a way to give those corporations tax breaks for
Hmm.
um,
Yeah,
investing and creating that infrastructure.
right. They're gonna have to. They can't go. The Republicans can't go back to fossil fuels when the people that are donating to them, the corporations, are going to renewable energies. So they're going to be when Republicans get back into power, they're going to realize that some things have changed. You know what I mean? Like when Barack Obama set the fuel standards, and then Republicans got in, and Trump was like, "Nope, we're going to get rid of those," and the
They
entire
failed.
even the auto industry was like, no, like we're not going to do that. We're going to keep doing what the plan was because that's the plan, you know?
Well, and it also made sense for them. Like they had to put all these investments in
Right.
order to make these things happen, and to roll those back didn't make any sense, especially when their constituents were like, "Look, you know, we were paying $4 a gallon for gas, and it's a real hard to justify a gas guzzler at $4 a gallon."
Right, unless you're the guy that's getting money from the United Arab Emirates, and they're saying, "Hey, could you take more gas?" You know, and Trump's like, "Yeah, I guess so. I'll reduce standards." But no,
Hmm.
there's a long-term plan, and I just think Republicans are going to come in and say, "All right, here's the fossil fuel subsidies," and the fossil fuel companies are going to be like, "We're not there anymore. We want subsidies for the renewable stuff we're building, not on the infrastructure we're slowly dismantling." You know.
And from the more conservative ideas is that it should be tax breaks that are encouraging them to invest in those, because
Mhm.
because once again that goes to the whole, hey, I'm going to have you pay money, and then I'm going to take a portion of it and give it back to you to make this infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so to me
Hopefully.
it's one of those things where it's like, you know what you have to do is you have to, I think, if you want to put electric vehicle infrastructure in place and quickly and effectively, what you have to do is you have to say, all right, we will give you a 100% tax write-off on this electrical infrastructure. You have to document everything.
Hmm.
And, once you put that in there, you can write it off. I mean, they're writing off everything else. Might as well make it really easy for them to invest in this and then write it off.
Yeah, and that's just getting things done fast. But
Hmm.
sometimes you just need things to build gradually. There wasn't thousands of gas stations instantly, you know what I mean? There shouldn't be thousands of electrical instantly. It's going to grow as the market grows, you know?
Hmm.
I don't know. You,
In which case, then the same thought still holds.
mhm.
You know, paying the feds to take your money and then give it back to you doesn't make any sense in that regard.
It doesn't. No. Mm.
And so
That's what
that's
I'm just sitting here thinking about, like, the small time inventor, the small time creator that wants to get into a market but is shoved out because Shell's already there. Same thing with the cannabis, same thing with anything, you
hmm
know. It's like, yeah, no, the big guys are like the vaping, you know. I had a friend Tony that used to make vape juice and he was
hmm
really good at it. And then the government or Lorillard started getting into it and Camel and all those started making vape and now the regulations of what it takes to make it put Tony out of business, you know?
hmm
I mean, no offense, Tony, I wasn't gonna smoke your vape juice because you're not really FDA regulated or anything. I don't know what you're putting in there, you know?
you know
But other
no-
people loved it. I just wasn't gonna, wasn't gonna do it.
and that's the thing is like everybody gets to make that choice in that regard. Those things are not good for you in any stretch of the imagination. So the
Right.
idea that one is somehow better for you than the other is, I
Yeah.
mean,
You're
moot
sucking
point
on
to me.
you're sucking on vegetable oil, you know what I mean? I don't know.
I mean,
Anyway, did you get to see any of the testimony from the police, Capitol Police
hmm
in Washington? Did you? What did you
hmm
think of it?
oh boy,
Were they actors?
no.
Okay. Do you
Like
think that they had help writing what they had written?
I guarantee you that they did.
Yeah. They
I mean,
used certain words that I could tell they've never normally used.
I think anybody in their right mind is going to
Uh-huh. Yeah.
use, especially for prepared statements.
Right. That's what I'm talking about.
But
The
these are
initial
also
statements.
these are also people who are police officers. They have practice writing prepared statements, like for reports.
Yeah, and they've
This
also
is this is a different theater though. So,
yeah, you're always going to get help. Republicans get help writing their stuff too. And
oh yeah,
I'm just starting at the beginning at the I mean the statements what their testimony was just riveting. I mean, I don't know how to put it other than riveting, you know. But their initial statements were kind of scripted, and so I just wanted to get past that
I mean
because
it's
people are saying they're actors, but when you have these guys reading what was written for them, yeah, they're gonna sound a little stilted. You know what I mean?
all
Even
I
if
know
they're
is all I
actors.
know is if they were actors, then MAGA paid for a lot of people to beat up smackers.
Man, yeah.
because
So
because quite literally, you literally have images of these people being fucking beaten up by crowds.
holy shit! Did you see? What image there was an image that stood out to me of somebody with like a garden hose spraying blue smoke into the building, you know, where the police were barricaded, and that to me was I saw a lot of stuff, but sitting so close and watching that they had that with them, this wasn't just not planned. You know, you don't bring a big canister full of smoke and a garden hose with you, you know, to the so it hit me in a different way. I looked at their eyes. I stood like 2 feet from the TV and I looked at their eyes when they spoke, and there was no denying that they weren't lying. You know what I mean?
It was thousand-yard stare.
Yes. Yeah, you can see that they're still dealing with it. They're still questioning why their own countrymen would call them niggers. You know what I mean? It's disgusting to me. And to watch their eyes while they were talking about it, watching it really broke me. It hurt me. It hurt
it
me that they're not getting the support. It really did.
it Like listening to the testimony and seeing the videos, the images, what it boils down to is that Magaland has the narrative that they want to push, and every time that you take the actual factual and show it, then they just try to spin it the next way that they can. They're crisis actors.
Mm-hmm.
Look, then did you if they were crisis actors, did the, you sit there and say that it's Antifa, but it wasn't Antifa because you were there to stop the steal? Like, I don't know what you're trying to say here, because you're admitting that your people were there, but then you're trying to say that it's not your people, but it was your people. And so are you Antifa, or what are you? What is this?
Right. Well, that's the whole thing. It came down to Jamie Raskin was asking a Republican about his when he said it was just tourists in the Capitol. And I knew exactly what was going on. Jamie was like, "You saw those images. How could you say they were tourists?" And this guy was going, "No, I saw tourists." Because he did. He saw a couple people walking between the ropes. So he's talking about those two people. Jamie Raskin's talking about the other 500 people that were literally breaking the building. And it was this disconnect. Neither one of them would say that. Like, yes, there
Mm-hmm.
was two people that looked like tourists, but can you admit that the other 400, the 498 were destroying the Capitol and trying to kill us? And the other guy's like, I didn't see them. Like,
Oh yeah,
I'm
no,
not
yeah,
talking about them, you
lying
know?
by omission,
Yeah, right.
or the fact that one of them showed up to Trump's rally wearing a fucking bulletproof vest. Boy,
Right.
for being a peaceful gathering, you wouldn't think that you'd need a bulletproof vest at your own people's gathering for a peaceful
Right.
gathering, right? Or maybe you knew that it was going to get violent, and so you decided to wear a bulletproof vest.
Hmm. Yeah. He didn't decide to wear the bulletproof vest on his own because he thought, I'm in danger. He got a credible threat of violence, and that he was told that maybe he should wear it. It's not like a fashion statement that guy makes, Mo Brooks. It's not a
Yep.
fashion statement Mo Brooks makes. It's one that he was told that he had to do for his safety.
Which, let's be realistic, if you're being told that you need to wear a bulletproof vest, and you're going to sit down and have other people tell you, no, it was just a peaceful day of tourists at the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
mm, no,
Right.
no.
No.
I may
No.
have been born at night, but it wasn't last night.
But, I'm going to admit it. There was a surrounding of the Capitol of people that were doing nothing, right?
Oh, and I mean, and
And there
the
was a
vast
group that
majority is that.
right. But so when I was a kid, my friends broke into a house and started just breaking the walls and everything, right? And I told them don't do that. And I was standing at the door saying don't do that. Don't do that. And my mom called the police on us. And I got in just as much trouble as the guy that climbed up into the attic and ripped the copper pipe out because I was there and did nothing. And we got to realize that the cat people, even the people that were there and doing nothing, did something because they in mass encouraged the mob that was doing it. They thought they had support behind them and in front of them and from the White House.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So there you can't say you're innocent because you were there watching it. You know what I mean? If you didn't, I don't know what you would do. I wouldn't have walked in there. I might have tried to pick off people in the back and say, "Hey, come here, get out of there. You're going to get in trouble."
Look, you don't want to be here. This is not the direction you want to go with your life.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to typecast anybody, but it
And
wasn't FBI agents that were there. It wasn't Antifa that was there. It was it was a bunch of people whose drug was Trump getting a full dose of Trump in person. It was like yeah, it was when you get just a little too much heroin and you're like I'm freaking out a little bit. That's where they were. And they did. They attacked the Capitol. Now their hangover is coming over, but it's slowly disbanding, I think.
or my personal favorite is the fact that I'm gonna use this one on them. The fact that a bunch of them took pictures of them doing this shit, and then suddenly freaked out and deleted them from their social media. So my question is if you weren't doing anything wrong, what do you got to hide?
What do you got to hide? Yeah. That's my
If you weren't doing anything wrong, what do you have to hide? That's what you like to say. Wasn't about privacy, clearly. I mean, that's, not it.
You were doing the right thing. And if you're doing the right thing, you should be able to stand up for what you do. Right?
Or you knew you were doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you're trying to cover your ass.
Yep. I think people should stand up for their convictions. If you believe you were doing the right thing, stand there and say it. You did it.
Fucking
Do
own
it.
it. Fucking own it.
Own it. Fucking own it. Yeah.
It's like, look, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's plenty that the federal government has done that I think warrants any number of actions against the Capitol, but keeping one guy in power is not one of them.
Yeah. No. No. And we're going to find out a lot of stuff because the Justice Department got rid of the executive order restriction, which I think is interesting. Do you think they can do that? Isn't it a personal thing between a president and the staff? It's not something the Justice
executive order,
remove,
executive
right?
privilege.
Executive privilege, sorry.
Yeah, executive. I don't think that's that they got rid of it so much as, I think it applies. Like, this is a tough one because I think it applies during a president's term. I don't know that it applies after.
No, well, that's what they're saying is it's supposed to protect in real-time information and not disclose the decision-making process. But I could see where it could be a president and a staff member well after, years after, I talked to you about that. If I talk to you in a note about something, I don't want you going telling other people about it 10 years later. You know what I mean?
But I mean, the difference is that this is an elected official. The reality is that there are very few things that I'm paying you to do that I shouldn't be able to find out.
That's a great point. There's a difference between me and a politician, isn't there? When they're on
look, I fully get that, you're going to get information on. I fully understand and appreciate the fact that you're going to get information about troops and threats that you can't just necessarily disseminate. I understand that because you're trying to do something in real time and you don't want them tipped off.
Right.
But everything else, like after the fact, especially after the fact, you should be able to find out what's going on. You should be able to get that information. That privilege should only last during the course of the presidency, unless there happens to be some type of ongoing information that you absolutely have to keep silent. Like, for example, I would say any number of military research projects.
Right.
Not that I think that that's necessarily a great one, but I could see why we wouldn't necessarily want Russia or China knowing what we're working on.
Mm-hmm. Even though they're in the systems knowing more than we do, right?
Right.
Aren't they in every hacked system now,
Pretty much. So I mean, reality is that I do fully expect that anything that they do, we should be able to have access to. So all of these conversations, all of these meetings, I fully expect as someone who is a tax-paying citizen that I should have every right to this information.
Nice.
Like, privilege, I can understand attorney-client privilege, having worked, because you're trying to protect your client the best that you can.
Right.
When it comes to privilege, executive privilege in the United States of America, there should be very, very, very few things that the public doesn't know about. And even then, I don't necessarily agree that it all should be hidden.
Okay. How do you feel about the 1-6 Commission?
How do I feel about it?
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's been on for like 2 weeks, right? We really haven't talked about it.
Well, they just kind of started kicking it off.
Right.
And then you got testimony this week.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's still, what, four seats open?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
This is a tough one.
I know, that's why I asked.
So I'm going to preface it like this. When we had the 9/11 Commission, we had external unknowns that were a factor in this. Okay. And we had to get to the bottom of anything and everything that we could.
Right.
We had DOJ, we had military, we had NSA, CIA, every bit of it going on. Right. Homeland. We had so much that we had to get information on what happened, why it happened, how we prevent it. We knew that we were going to be dealing with an active threat for a long period of time after.
Mm-hmm.
Internally speaking, with the 1-6 Commission, right now we have a lot of active cases, over 500. We have the first of several plea agreements that have been entered. We're going to get more people that are going to talk, that are going to give us information. Part of me feels like it's too early.
Okay.
Because this is one of those things, like from a court perspective, you now have this body that's meeting that could potentially influence these trials. And if you influence these trials in any way, shape, or form, we're not going to get the justice that we would expect. Because there are going to be judges who throw out these cases because of X, Y, and Z. And I think that is detrimental to where we're at right now. I think that we need to get as much information, as much prosecution done as we can.
Okay.
And then from there, move on to commission. Because these are people that we need to find out what the hell happened. And if we give them any sort of out because of some mass publicized commission,
right,
it's going to do us a greater disservice than if we would have waited and done the commission. I think the commission is necessary, and it absolutely needs to happen. I think it's too soon.
I think it's too soon to make it public, but I like the bookend of the DOJ going from bottom up, and this get it because there's people still in office right now that should be held accountable and are still making decisions and are privy to information that, you know, a seditionist maybe shouldn't have. And so I like the commission I just wish they hadn't come out publicly until they had people. Like, you know, Jim Jordan did something. You know, Mo Brooks did something. You know, Matt Gaetz did something. Mark Meadows did something. Get the information before you say you're going to get it, and let the DOJ catch up. But I think we should be attacking the problem from both sides, one from the higher, one from the lower. You know.
Well, I think the problem there too, though, is more chain of custody and evidence, because of the way that prosecution works and because of the way that evidence collection works.
Sure.
Getting this information from Congress really circumvents these rules that we have in place. Like, I think that what ends up happening is it's poisoned fruit is what it is.
Okay.
And I think that that's why this is particularly a problem. Said it's not that I don't think that it should happen. I absolutely think it should happen, but I think that we've got a lot of work to do before we start to get to the how do we prevent this from happening again. I think it's great that I think it's great that this is something that should happen. I think it would be great to form it, and I think it would be great to get a couple other Republicans who, you know, voted for Trump's impeachment that would be willing to sit on this. Other than Cheney and Kinzinger.
I agree. You could have come up with 3 other people that would have said yes. And
I think that is necessary.
Yeah.
I really wish that they would have done that.
I wish they would have had a senator, one from each side, sit on it, you know?
Well, because it's the House, they can't.
Maybe. They also could have done a nonpartisan commission. She could have set up a nonpartisan commission like outside of the House. She just chose to do it here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they could have set up a whole new, like, she could have funded a whole new office. You know what I mean? The office of getting down to the bottom of shit. But she didn't. She started this commission. Every politician claims that there's no other option than what they're doing, and the truth is that there is, you know.
Well, there's a lot of options, but unfortunately, I think what Democrats happen to do most of the time is they rush into it because they want to get their answer.
They want the credit. They want the credit for rushing into it.
And I think that's, you know, I think ultimately that's, you know, part of why both impeachments on Trump failed the way that they did. It's not that I don't think that they had evidence in order to do it, like especially the second one.
Right. But imagine if they hadn't done the first one, but then had all that in the second one.
Hmm.
It wouldn't have changed anything. They weren't going to convict him. They were
Oh, I mean, there was a
never
bunch
going
of
to
them that
convict him.
weren't going to. Absolutely.
No.
And that was reality. Like that was
Hmm.
absolutely reality.
They
But
gave Donald Trump his power. Donald Trump never created any of his own power. They always said, okay, this guy's the king. But they never thought to think, I'm the king. Like Mitch McConnell, like Paul Ryan, they were never like, fuck you, I control the Senate, you know?
or you know the fact that there should be no kings because that's kind of why we did the whole Declaration of
Right,
Independence thing. But you know,
right.
what
So
do I know?
that's what, but I do think there needs to be accountability from these things. Nancy Pelosi said it about Donald Trump before the first impeachment. We're going to give him the rope and he'll hang himself. And I think that's kind of what happened with these insurrection congressmen. You know what I mean? Like Jim
Hmm.
Jordan. I keep going back to Jim Jordan, who's sitting there going, I think I talked to him on January. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Right.
now, the used car salesman that can shout insults like anybody suddenly stammering on Fox News, which is amazing that Fox News is like getting all of these things out of these people. You know what I mean? Like I can't there's like Chris Wallace did it, somebody else did it. You're seeing these Fox is slowly change. It's I don't know. I'm seeing a change in the Republican dynamic that isn't there. Maybe it's self-preservation, but it looks like they're moving back to center to me.
I think it's self-preservation. And on top of that, I mean, like, I'm going to go with also a number of lawsuits that are threatening to tank the network. That they're going to lose their ass on if they don't fucking change their ways because they know they're in the wrong.
You think so?
Oh yeah. I
Okay.
mean, let's be realistic. They know they're in the fucking wrong.
Hmm.
Like fucking allowing people to sit down and go, oh well, you know, when it comes to the immune system, a natural healthy, and then they're like, we don't support this. We believe that Biden's vaccine efforts are like, wow. Like, I mean, you
Yeah.
even got Newsmax to say that after one of their hosts did the whole like natural immune system thing, and
Yeah.
Newsmax had to issue a statement saying that they're on board with Biden's vaccination efforts and
Right.
fully support them. I'm like, wow, how fucking stupid is this?
The My Pillow guy was going on his rant, and the host got up and walked away. He repeated it 3 times. The disclaimer: "This is not true. This is not true." And then he's like, "I don't know what to do," and got up and walked out. They're not
It's
allowed to say it anymore because it's not true.
and that's the reality is that you know uh, you can say you can say anything you want, but you have to be prepared for the consequences of it. And in this
Yeah.
case, like they have no fucking proof. Like I've said, look, you know, you can sit down and tell me that when it came to the voting laws that were in place, you can sit down and tell me that you didn't like them. Like that's fair. You can tell me you didn't like them, but just because you don't like it, that doesn't make it fraud. It's not
Right.
fraud when it's legal.
Right. No, I'm with you on there. I think voting should be easier, not harder. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Voting absolutely needs to be easier. And in terms of how you make it easier, I think we've come up with a lot of rules to complicate it so that way we can exclude a lot of people from voting, and that's really all there is to it.
Hmm. Yeah. I People don't understand that they're attacking black people to get to us. You know what I mean? Like I don't.
Or I think it was one of the oh, who where was it? It's one of these places. One of the Republicans ended up admitting that Texas. It was in Texas, and I forget who it was. One of the Republicans ended up admitting that the changes in the voter regulations would make it harder for disabled people to vote.
Yeah. Of
And
course.
it's like, and you're cool with that, knowing that you're going to have a lot of elderly conservative voters who are not going to be able to make it in to vote.
That's my point. Like it's this whole skit. What are we going to do? We're going to suppress the vote. Our voters? Some of them. What do we do after that? I don't know. Tell them that the election's rigged, that they shouldn't vote. Well, what if they get past that? I don't know. We'll kill them. Tell them the vaccine's bad. Like who's going to be left to vote for you? And I think certain Republicans are picking up on that. Like
I mean,
there's only so much you can squeeze and
even
affect your voters before they
yeah,
don't turn out.
Alabama's governor is now saying the
Mm-hmm.
unvaccinated people are letting him down.
Yeah.
Louisiana's Republican governor has flat out come out and said that, you know,
Yeah.
this is absolutely bullshit, and that it's time for people who aren't vaccinated to get vaccinated and step it up. And it's all I
Yeah.
can think back to is an episode of Futurama where Zap Brannigan sends wave after wave of his own people into battle, and they all keep getting fucking obliterated. And like, no, you cowards, stop dying.
That's exactly it. And I think like the boots on the ground Republicans are starting to realize that they overshot their mark and they're really screwed. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can't save the voters that you killed, right? And
No.
like the problem is like representatives have been doing what Trump told them, saying what Trump told them to say. But
Mm-hmm.
you people like you and I wonder who's telling Trump what to say, right? And do you think Russia got rid of a useful idiot just because he's not president anymore? No, he's still paying off his debts and he's just saying what he's told to say. And Republicans I think are learning like let's speak for ourselves instead of for Trump. Like
I don't. I wish.
this infrastructure bill, Trump is like, nope, 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 tank it, tank it, tank it. And the Republicans are like, I don't what? You know, like you're not in politics. It's like they're looking at him differently. Like you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking
Some of
about.
them are. I.
Yeah,
I.
some of them,
I
16
don't
of
think
them.
that's. I don't think that's the case. Still.
Yeah.
I. I do think that he is still actively doing things to create loyalty tests to the
Yes.
brand,
Yes, but
and
he's getting less people accepting the challenge is what I'm saying.
that's and my hope is that it would keep being less and less and less.
Me too.
But it's hard to say, like, honestly.
Mm.
I think here's my honest opinion. This one is going to be unpopular, but I think that um, the big question is what's going to happen after Biden.
Yeah.
After this first term, because Biden's up there. Let's
Right.
be realistic. Biden is old, and
Yeah.
the idea that he's going to run for another term as president, like if I were him, that would be really hard to justify.
Yeah.
But if I were to play smart ball, if your choice was between Kinzinger or a Trump, I think a lot of Democrats would vote for Kinzinger.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this one. What if it was Kinzinger against Harris?
That's a tough one because Kinzinger doesn't have the GOP support, and that's clear. Like
Right.
Kinzinger's on his own.
But he's a white man.
Mm-hmm.
And not a black woman.
Mm-hmm. I unfortunately don't think that there would be enough support for Harris.
I don't think there would be either. That's my point. I think that Kinzinger would be seen more as the right version of Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
Like Clinton was left but went to center. Kinzinger can be right and go to center, and that's. I think
what I would love to.
Because what's the wild swing? We went from Obama to Trump, wild swing to dull Biden. What's the wild swing from there? Another dull Republican? Good, because I don't want to know about politics. I want to know about my life, not yours.
I mean, not that this will ever happen and get the kind of support that it would. I think the hilarious response would be is that a Democrat runs with a Republican vice president, kind of like what we did in Montana, where we had a Democratic governor with a lieutenant Republican governor.
Right.
And the plan was like there are things that we're going to get done, and we're going to get this done in a bipartisan fashion, and it's either all aboard, motherfuckers, or step off.
Right. I always thought that, then this is stupid and it'll never work, but I always thought that the vice president should be the guy that lost. Like right now, Donald Trump should be vice president and Joe Biden should be president.
Oh, Christ. Ew.
Like it should have been like Bush and Gore vice president.
Oh my God. I mean, that just sounds like the SNL sketch that they did.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's who it should be, because who do they want to be president? The second most, the person that got the second most votes, right? Isn't that who should be president if the first president dies? Yeah. So
If I would say that would make sense if you had multiple parties running. Like if
Yeah,
we actually had
yeah,
legitimate third, fourth, and fifth parties, that would make a ton of sense.
right.
Otherwise, it's always just going to be the other guy who lost.
It'll be the
Could you
two
imagine? Could
extremes
you
in
imagine
office.
John Kerry being vice president?
To
Could you
who?
imagine John McCain being
Mitt
vice president to Obama
or Mitt Romney? Yeah.
or Mitt Romney? Oh God, Hillary Clinton as Donald Trump's vice president?
That would
Jesus
be just,
Christ.
oh man, I would want a video
No.
camera the whole time.
Oh God, that idea is enough to make me want to drink.
That is hilarious. He couldn't have said
And
lock
that's,
her
I
up and
mean,
everything, right? If she was the vice president, he couldn't be
I
like, lock
mean,
her up.
God, that would be such a fucking disaster, though. Holy cow.
Well, yeah, like Biden's putting Kamala Harris in charge of immigration. Can you imagine if Biden had to put Trump in charge of it?
Oh, fuck. Now I get why the vice president used to just be a symbolic office that didn't do anything.
Right.
Oh God, that's awful.
That is awful.
Jesus. You, holy
Yeah,
shit.
that's awesome.
Bob Dole, like
Yeah,
Bob
right?
Dole as Clinton's fucking vice president.
Right? Carter as Reagan's?
Bob Dole doesn't approve of this. Oh no.
Nixon as Kennedy's?
Oh Jesus. Fucking Reagan and Mondale.
Right, Reagan and Carter. That cracks me up.
Oh Christ. Oh no. Oh God. That's painful to think about.
There's some great combinations here.
Which is why I like the idea of, the ticket.
Yeah.
But man, I wonder, like, if you really wanted to show like that bipartisanship was still alive, having one party run for president, the other party run for vice president, and just sit down and say, like, look, our job is to do shit together, and we're going to do it together.
Right. Force the top two people in the party to work together for 4 years.
And it's like, look, it's like we're going to disagree on things, but that means that it becomes incumbent upon us to figure out what we can agree on.
Yeah. I mean, Obama had Republicans in the room, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think Biden even has some Republicans in the cabinet, maybe? I don't think Donald Trump had any.
No, he does. He does.
Does he? So I think
Yeah.
I like having that opposing voice, you know what I mean? I don't know if I'd run a radical Trump supporter shouting in all the cabinet meetings, but having a
Well, I mean, it's, you wouldn't want somebody who's from the far left or the far right in either of your cabinets. I mean,
right?
that's the case.
Look at the progressives trying to tank the infrastructure deal, right? Like, we better get what we want or you're not going to get anything.
Which case, then like have Republicans be like, all right, fuck it, we got to pass this in spite of them.
Right. Yep. Because wow, leave it to the Democrats to be screwed by the Democrats. Wow.
I mean that does sound like a very Democrat thing to not get your way and then go fuck yourself.
Right. I think
that's what we've seen time and time again.
Mitch said it, like, this bill guarantees to be something nobody's happy with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just it. Is like nobody should be happy about the fact that we're having to spend a bunch of money on infrastructure, because we shouldn't have to be spending a bunch of money on infrastructure because it's falling the fuck apart.
Because we already should have,
Right.
Somebody asked me, like, what's the difference between a rhino and a Democrat?
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Did you? Okay. Because
yeah.
I thought it was a really smart answer. Democrats want to back.
It was fucking Jim Jordan that asked it, and you responded to him, I think.
Yeah. And that's the truth, is Republicans, I don't know how I said it, but yeah.
I call MAGA yeehaw socialists, because it's not that they actually want less spending. They just want spending on their own priorities.
Right, and not on the other people.
Yeah, it's not that they actually want less money spent. They just want it spent on their causes. So fuck it, you get to be yeehaw socialists. Fuck you.
Yeah, pretty much. That's a shame. But I think there's a bipartisan shit coming Bipartisan
Bipartisan
shit.
shit.
Shit, yeah. I think
I
that's what I'm
mean,
gonna call it. Yeah, there's the name of the title of the episode right there. Bipartisan
bipartisan.
shit.
I mean, it's not wrong. It's really not.
Right. Well,
It's
if you base the fact that politics isn't actual real, it's like a made up, fabricated sort of zone, then yes, it's bipartisan shit because politics shouldn't be the way we see anything, you know?
it shouldn't be, and especially because it's not like the roads and bridges that are going to be built are only going to be traveled by Republicans or Democrats.
Right. No,
You
we're
know,
all the jobs are going to be taken by everybody, you know what I mean? Except for the
exactly.
disabled people because you're not building anything into that infrastructure. So anyway,
I mean, they might build you a suicide or something,
nah, actually
just something to dump you right off a cliff or something.
we did have that moment because the ADA had its anniversary, so people did pay attention to us for a hot minute.
It's like, oh yay, ADA. Who the fuck are you again? Oh, here, let me just eat this piece of cake since it's here.
Right. So I don't know. I don't have a problem being in line.
Right.
But like I said, I think that we're all helping each other, and I think every movement needs to help each other. When you're excluding yourself just to maintain your base, you're shrinking your base.
Well,
I'll always believe in the intersectionality of all of this. You know what I
well,
mean?
and like we talked about, when it comes to the voting side of things, I mean, there are elderly voters who you're going to end up excluding, and
Mm-hmm.
realistically, like, the voting laws have been made super complicated just to keep people from voting. Our
Right.
state ID systems are very advanced.
Mm-hmm.
You should, that information's up to date. You should be able to just show up with your ballot that got mailed to you that you've already filled out
Yep.
with your ID,
Yep.
and then just be like, boop, and maybe what you do is you separate ballots. So you've got, your Fed ballot and you got your state ballot. You show up with your passport for your Fed ballot because it shouldn't really matter, like, who you're voting for president. And then for your state side, for your districts and whatever, you show up with your state ID and be like, boop, there you go.
As long as the state or federal government issues that ID without making it hard, if you just give it to everybody, I'm okay with that. But if you make us have to try and jump through rings to get the ID, then I'm not in favor of it.
Well, I mean, it's like this, they make you jump through rings in order to get your driver's license, but in terms of like a regular ID, they
Just state
actually,
ID?
most states tend to make them pretty easy to just get an ID.
Yeah, mine is good forever. I never even got a Florida one because my Illinois one is good forever.
So, I mean, it's just one of those things, like, it's easy to do. It really is easy to make happen. I don't see why they try to. I mean, I know why. I know why they try to do it, or
Yeah.
I just don't see how it is beneficial to them in the way that they think it is.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think they're going to suppress more of their vote than they suppress the Democrats' vote.
Oh, why are you losing? Get out there and break the rules and
Right.
vote harder,
Like
you cowards!
voter suppression pumps up Democrats. And I thought to myself, that's why they're not passing the voting rights bill, is because they want to campaign on this. You know what I mean? Because Republicans are like, we got to do it. And Democrats are like, we can't let them do it. But as soon as it's fixed, what are they going to talk about? You know what I mean? Like, what are they going
Mhm.
to campaign on? There's nothing left. You already did Mr. Potato Head and Dr. Seuss. You can't go to anything else, you know?
Right, right.
No, I don't know. We just it's so weird to me because you can point to a Republican that sucks, like Abbott in Texas, right? Or you can point to Ron Johnson, who's like, I'm not qualified to be a senator. There was an article that the Lincoln Project posted up in which Ron Johnson said, "Yeah, you're right. I'm not qualified." So I don't know. And then
Mm,
like Jeff Flake, who's like, I'm not, this isn't me. Bye. Yeah, I didn't like you before, Jeff Flake, but you grew a backbone a little too late for everybody,
right. And that's just it. Is like, instead of actually voting for somebody who was actually going to do good things for the game, you voted for a populist, and when
Hmm.
you realize that it's like that populist was really the only thing that's powering your party, not like any sort of actual,
No moral, no character, no. Yeah.
no adherence to actual, conservative values. Like the mental gymnastics of people talking about how he's the most conservative president ever is like
Yeah.
fucking hysterical, because the dude, even from a religious standpoint, doesn't know a fucking Bible verse, can't fucking stay uh, faithful to any of the people that he's married, has multiple fucking uh porn star issues, drug issues. So like
Yeah.
let's throw that out. In terms of spending, he didn't do anything conservative in terms of spending.
No, he was the first one to spend $1 trillion.
So like I don't even know what to like. I don't even know where the fuck they're getting their information from. Like it is oh yeah, don't forget that he also did more to, ban gun parts than Obama ever could.
Yes. Do you know? I don't know if you saw that, but I posted that Donald Trump had siphoned $75 million from the white supremacist movement. It's like he's single-handedly defunding white supremacists.
Right? Like I
So,
don't even I don't have anything, like I'm like, you literally like they said,
hmm,
uh Lenin took communism, took Marx and stood Marx on its head, and then Stalin came around and stood Lenin on its head, and that's basically what Trump did to the when it came to conservatives, Reagan came around and stood conservative values on their head, and then
right,
Trump came along and stood Reagan on his head.
right. He was a willing participant in it, but I still think he's an empty vessel that was directed by a lot of other people. And I don't
Well,
know
I
who all
think
those
I think
people
they
were.
tried. I think they tried, and I think that they were moderately successful until about late 2017, early 2018.
I just think somebody else was giving him advice.
I think so. I think so in the beginning, but I think the last 2 years he fucking was doing this on his own.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. Because there's a significant, you can see the drop off in things that were working
Hmm.
to when they stopped working,
But also his tactics became much more authoritarian. I
and
think,
erratic.
and I think he was getting a lot of advice from a communist dictator on how to suppress the population of protesters. I just think he was. I think when you're having a conversation with Vladimir Putin and Vladimir's like, you got a lot of protests going on, and Trump's like, yeah, I don't like it. Where does that conversation going to go? Like, it's just normal, I'm not saying he was talking to like all the dictators, but he had a special relationship with Vladimir Putin. I
He
don't think
liked,
Vlad.
well, I mean, it was no secret that Trump actually liked Mussolini.
Yeah, that's true. He did look up to that, right? Like Mussolini. Who else? There was somebody else that Trump was like, Andrew Johnson, maybe, like one of the former president, like racist presidents, he really looked up to. I think it was Andrew Jackson. I don't know. I
Like
just,
it does.
I don't think Donald Trump made. I don't. I think he had help. I think there was
I
people.
I agree. He had help. I think he had help his first 2 years, but then in his last 2 years, he took the "I alone can fix this"
Okay.
path and stopped listening to the people, because like I said, for his first 2 years everything was working. Like I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah. No, I
abs-
agree with you there.
and I think what happened was is that he saw all those things working and was like, yes, all of my decisions that I'm making entirely on my own are working, so I'm just going to
Right,
make all of my decisions entirely on my own. And you can just watch as everybody goes, oh fuck no.
right. He did some shitty things when he was getting good advice too. I mean, when he was getting advice, he locked up kids. Kids are still locked up, Jeffrey.
But here's the and this is where it gets really shitty. Kids were locked up under Obama. It's just that
Yes.
Trump gave less of a fuck
Right.
and wanted more of it to happen.
Yeah, he
Like it wasn't.
actively tried stripping kids away from their families like they were a natural resource, like they were
Mm,
the husk
mm,
off of a piece of corn, right? We want
yep.
the corn, we don't want the husk.
So let's be very clear that it started under Obama. Trump just dialed it up to fucking 11.
Right. Yeah.
So like, and we need to say that it was all fucking bad. Like this should have never
Mhm.
happened. It doesn't matter which president it was. Like it
Right.
shouldn't have started under Obama, and it shouldn't have had the mechanism to get dialed up to 11 under Trump. Period. End of story.
Yeah, you gotta, at some point, you have to defeat the reason that those kids are coming here. Otherwise, you gotta find a place to put them. You know what I mean? That's just the truth. You know, they're
Mm.
having immigration proceedings with like 500 defendants at once. We need more resources down there to get this stuff going through. That's why kids are still in cages, because we're taking so long to process them. I'm not saying it's Biden's fault. I'm not saying it's Trump's fault. I'm not saying it's the immigrants' fault. I just don't like the system we have, and nobody's trying to change it. They're trying to put a band-aid on it, you know?
Yep. Well, and it goes back to everything that we've talked about. If you want people to stop coming here, you gotta do things to make things better in the places that they're coming from. Period. End of story.
Period. End of story. So what are you watching lately? Anything
What am I
good?
watching lately?
What are you watching? What are you doing?
I haven't really been watching a whole lot. It's
Yeah.
just been I've been kind of enjoying some time, uh, not really diving into a whole lot. Like
Good.
it's for me, it's just been really busy with work, and so
Mm-hmm.
like coming home and turning my brain off has been kind of nice.
Okay.
So honestly, like uh, really just kind of playing. I play Genshin Impact on mobile right now.
Oh my God, really? I just found out about this game like 2 days ago.
I've been playing it for a while,
Okay.
um, I enjoy playing it, and that's been fun for me.
Okay. I've been trying to find you a partner so we could have a deep impact discussion.
Mm.
Like, I don't know. My friends kids, they all play games all day long, all of them, you know, like they're gamers. And I was like, does anybody play Deep Impact? And somebody was like, ooh, they're coming out with a new one. And I was like, who's that? I want to talk to them.
I love like I played a lot of games in the past, and if I could sit down and still just game for entire
Mhm.
evenings and afternoons, I probably would. But at the
Yeah.
same time too, it's like I've found myself in a phase right now where it's like I don't even want to necessarily do that.
Yeah.
So
I always wanted the history of video games, like Dungeons and Dragons. I wanted the history of some of these video games, Mario even, or I think I started with like Call of Duty, and I was like, I wish somebody would like we could just discuss like how it transitioned to where it was to where it is now. It's the I'm a history podcast, but I never
yeah.
did the history of a video game.
Well, I mean, I'm tell you right now, avoid Activision Blizzard content with the like it's the fucking plague because that's a disaster right now.
Is it?
If you get the chance, look up the lawsuit that's happening against Activision Blizzard right now for basically a bunch of sexist bullshit that's happened. Where like I mean it literally is just horrific,
Like in
and they
management or in their product?
in management.
Oh wow!
And yeah, I mean it's bad. It's royally bad.
So boycott activism,
Activision
Activision.
boycott activism. I mean, I wouldn't mind that, but no. Activision Blizzard, yeah, stay away from that. It's bad.
Okay.
It's like I mean, here's the thing: is like they had a lawsuit against them from the state of California, and they had 2 years to get their shit in place, and they couldn't even do that.
Wow.
And so now it's like become this huge problem. Like seriously, read up on it, and this is one of those things where it's like you support the product that aligns with your values, and
Yep. Yep.
I can't. I mean, I haven't played any Activision Blizzard games in a while, but I
Okay.
can't with that.
We're gonna make that the first topic next Sunday. How about that? Because this is
Yeah,
Thursday. Coming up this Sunday, we're gonna talk about that. Because I do want to support companies that do good, and I don't. I want to let people know not to support companies that do bad. I
right.
really, I think that I think our votes are turning green, and it's the money in our pocket, and I think we need to spend that wisely.
Oh, absolutely. And
So
and you know, uh, it's
yeah.
yeah,
So
it's bad.
we I had some guy commented on a retweet I had from an organization we supported, and he said I asked them for accommodations and they wouldn't give them to me. And I said, "Did you have a discussion?" And he started yelling at me and then blocked me, called me a troll for commenting on my own post. And I was like, whatever. So I reached out to the organization and I said, "Can we get comment?" And they were like, "Oh, our schedules just don't align." And I was like, "Well, maybe you should take care of this internally before you make a comment." I told them, "You're right, your house isn't in order. You need to get shit straight before you talk to me about accessibility when you're denying people accessibility."
Well,
And
and
so
I
I
mean
want I
that's
don't
the other thing
support
too.
those. I don't support those things either, and I want to know about that stuff.
Right. And other, one of the things that people need to keep in mind is that reasonable accommodation doesn't mean right to accommodation, unfortunately.
We talked about that on we're running out of time. On Inspirations Beyond Disabilities coming up, we talked about that. The fact that reasonable accommodations aren't the lottery.
Mm-mm.
You don't get whatever, you don't get to walk around and demand everything in the world. What it is, it's a negotiation. And the guys were complaining because the Paralympic athletes, there was 33, I think, swimmers, and they got one assistant, and these guys were like, "That's not reasonable." And I was like, "Well, who negotiated what was reasonable?" you know like
Right.
they were mad at the Olympics, and I was like, "It isn't the Olympics, it's whoever negotiated with Japan about how many people they could have there, right?" And the guy didn't negotiate for more. Like, you say 33 is reasonable, they say one. Where was the conversation after that, right?
Right. Right. I mean, absolutely. I think that, when I saw that, I was pissed off too. It's like, absolutely, they had every right. Like
Mm,
when you talk about what's reasonable accommodation for showing people around, yeah, one person for 33 perfectly able-bodied people makes plenty of sense.
maybe it may, but that's what I'm saying. Maybe it does to somebody that doesn't want to give a class of people more than they deserve or more than they want to give them. They're never going to give you, if you ask for two, you're going to get four next year. You know what I mean? It's like you're going to want two for every athlete, and that's what they're worried about. So reasonable accommodations actually limit our accessibility because people are worried about having to give them forever. And whoever negotiated with Japan, Japan said one. We didn't go, no, 33. And there's the issue. That's what
Hmm.
we need to work on.
Absolutely.
The athletes aren't themselves negotiating for their own accessibility.
And that's a problem too. Like,
Yeah.
they should be able to sit down and, say, hey, I need
Yeah.
this. This is the reasonable accommodation.
Right. Yeah.
It's
It's
not
just,
like you're asking for a team of 10 to chauffeur you around. It's like you need the one person that you rely on and for in everyday life
uh-huh.
in the US to
Right.
join you.
Right. But people seem to negotiate your rights like it's a bargaining chip. Like, uh, I, I don't I don't agree with Al Sharpton very often on his messaging, but he said people are negotiating our right to vote, and that in and of itself is an insult. You
Hmm.
know, like you're negotiating what's reasonable, like from a bad faith perspective, and that's not fair.
Hmm.
I love you,
Absolutely.
Jeffrey.
Love you too.
Yay, go have fun. I'm gonna talk
Oh,
to
I will.
you another time.
Sounds good. We'll
Bye.
see you later. Bye.
Ooh. Thank you, Jeffrey.
All right. Catch you later.
Bye. Got it. Got it.